So hydropower has been used for a very long time, for more than 100 years already, and a lot of different countries have already utilized hydropower to generate electricity. And some of the biggest ones are listed in this table here. We have China, which have about 24,000 dams and a capacity of around 296 in 2015, 296 gigawatts. And then we have Brazil, USA, Canada, Russia, India, Norway, and the total around the world is around one terawatts of energy or power. And so, in terms of capacity, overall global potential, in terms of the potential of generating electricity, we have 15,000 of terawatt hours of global potential, but only around 25% of these are actually being utilized now for electrical generation. There's a lot of untapped potential in Asia, in Latin America, North America, and even Africa. And of course, when we say Africa, they could possibly have development in terms of hydropower there, but because of the problems of climate change now, especially in that area, then that would be another challenge to see if indeed that would be a way to go for developing such renewable energy technology, because as we know, the climate change has really lessened the amount of rains and has already made it worse for drought seasons. And so that's why, in terms of hydropower, rain is very, very important as a resource, because water is the main source of the energy here. And so if you look at the global capacity or the global energy generation by hydropower, out of the 1,064 gigawatts of capacity, half of that is actually generated by just five countries. Out of 160 countries already work using hydropower, five countries are actually producing the most electrical energy generated. And so this is China, Brazil, USA, Canada, and Russia. And depending on the each country and the way they live, some of these countries are also rely heavily on hydropower as their energy source. Like for example, Canada, Brazil, and Norway. So Canada, Brazil, and Norway are some of the countries, the three of the top countries that rely heavily on hydropower as their main source of electrical energy. So for example, Canada relies on about 65% of their electrical energy from hydropower. Norway is around 98%, is heavily relying on hydropower as their source of energy. And for Brazil, it's around 77% of their local need for hydropower. So that's there are differences. Other types like USA and China, they have varying types of sources of energy, not only coming from hydropower. So they have solar PV, wind, and also of course they have their fossil fuel based energy sources. All right. So in terms of growth, hydropower has been, as I mentioned, has been around for a very long time already, and so it is one of the most mature renewable energy technologies that we have. And most of the hydroelectric power plants are located in developed nations. Like we have Canada, we have also in USA, and the development of new dams and hydroelectric power plants are not that much anymore these days, aside from some developing countries, like for example China. China has recently also completed the Three Gorges Dam, which is the largest single dam in capacity of 22.5 gigawatts. So this is the largest in China. So in terms of growth of hydropower, it has relatively became not so how to say exponential growth anymore. It's become quite stagnant, aside from a little bit of growth spurt from developing countries, because also of some issues, and some people they don't have the resources as well to actually do or construct such a big land of dams, for example. So some of the largest sites in the world for hydropower are in China, Brazil, We have these names here: Three Gorges Dams. We have Gori Dam in Venezuela. We have Russia, and you can see from the list that, in fact, the snowy mountain ranges that we have for hydropower is not even in this list. The snowy mountain in Australia is around only 5.5 gigawatts of capacity in total, and so that's only about 4 times less than the Three Gorges Dam of China. So it's not in the list for this moment. But if you look at the overall potential in terms of hydropower, we still have this is only 25% of the exploited potential to date. So it means that there is still some room for development, but it depends on country to country. And it was predicted that there will be an increase to almost 2,000 gigawatts, especially the addition of pump storage by 3 to 5 fold to about 400 to 700 gigawatts by the year 2050. And we are seeing that hydroelectric power plants could be still a major part of the sustainable energy future. But of course, we have to consider some aspects on um, uh, environmental concerns and environmental impact of these hydropower plants, especially on the issue of probably carbon emissions. If do we have carbon emissions coming from hydropower plants, or some decommissioning parts as well, maybe displacement of the big land mass of area, because we need to provide big amount of water for this one. But eventually, the ultimately hydropower still is being used now. Still, we are producing a lot of electrical energy generation based on these hydroelectric power plants, and it will be still be there in many years to come. But the growth has slowed down, and in fact, in terms of the capacity in Australia, it has also quite gone down, because we are not building any new dams for Australia. So let's look at the hydropower situation in Australia. So in Australia, we have about 120 hydroelectric power stations, and the biggest of which is in the Snowy Hydro system. So we can see from here, top 5 largest hydro plants in Australia are the Snowy Hydro systems here, about 1.5 gigawatts, 950 megawatts, and the total of these amounts to about 5.5 gigawatts capacity. So which is quite small compared to Three Gorges Dam in China. So this is the largest that we have right now. And it accounts for 20 gigawatt hours of energy, or 8% of total energy generated in Australia, as being generated by hydropower plants. The main major challenge for Australia, as we all know, Australia is the driest inhabited continent. So we have problems in terms of rainfall. So water availability is a key constraint in development of our future growth in Australia. We are lacking a lot of water. If we remember the past few years, and even this year, last year, we have quite a big drought. So that is a key constraint. So even for our drinking water for in the dams was also affected by the drought that we experienced last year. Maybe the major opportunities for Australia will be more of the run of the river systems, so the low head systems, rather than putting some major like dams or hydropower opportunities, because we have already more or less realized all of these major opportunities location wise, for example, and also resources wise. And so when you look at in the future, the share of hydropower probably in the year 2030 could fall into about 3.5% of the total energy generation, because we have seen quite a big rise in terms of other renewable energy sources like solar PV, wind energy, for example, wind power. So the contribution of hydropower will slowly go down in the overall energy mix of Australia. So if you look at some of the locations here, so mainly the locations of the hydropower stations are quite dense at the southern southeast part, so where the New South Wales and Victoria mountain ranges of snowy mountains are located. And of course, there are some smaller cases for hydropower somewhere here in the Western Australia, northern part here. But the blue triangle indicates the hydropower stations. So these are mainly located in this area and also in Tasmanian region. All right. So if we look at the overall picture, we are seeing that there is no more development, new development of big hydropower stations in Australia. No more, because there's a lot of concerns about also about its, you know, the long-term effect in terms of the decommissioning as well as the rise of other sources of energy. And so the contribution probably will be not on the hydropower anymore, but more of the other renewable energy sources like, as I mentioned, solar and wind energy. All right. So, so this is now the situation, the overall situation of hydropower in Australia.